Alright guys, today we're gonna be reacting to what's the secret of Black's luxury in poverty. Champagne.
Much of the cultural pattern of Southern rednecks became the cultural heritage of Southern blacks, more so than survivals of African cultures with which they had not been in contact for centuries. Even in colonial times, most blacks on American soil had been born on American soil. Moreover, such cultural traits followed blacks out of the southern countrysides and into the urban ghettos, north and south, where many settled. The very way of talking, later to be christened Black English, closely followed dialects brought over from those parts of Britain from which many white Southerners came, though these speech patterns died out in Britain while surviving in the American South, as such speech patterns would later die out among most Southern whites and among middle-class blacks, while surviving in the poorer black ghettos around the country. For example, where a Northerner said, "I am," "you are," "she isn't," "it doesn't," and "I haven't," a Virginian, even of high rank, preferred to say, "I be," "you be," "she ain't," "it don't," and "I hain't." These Virginia speechways were not invented in America. They derived from a family or regional dialects that had been spoken throughout the South and west of England.
So it's all fake. They all try to be part of the culture world. It's all coming from the Western world, huh?
During the 17th century. From these same regions of England came such words as yaller for yellow, axe for ask, acrost for across, y'all for you, bile for boil, dough for door, dis for this, and dat for that. Many of these usages have long since died out in England, though the word chitlins for hog entrails continued to be used in some localities in England, even in the 20th century, as such usage remained common among black Americans. But no such words came from Africa, nor did the holiday Kwanzaa, which originated in Los Angeles. The slaves'
That's
custom of
crazy.
marking their marriage.
Kwanzaa was originated on Los Angeles, and here we are celebrating this like it's something from Africa. Crazy.
Is by jumping over a broomstick, a custom resurrected at a posh wedding among blacks in 20th century New York as a mark of racial identity, was in fact a pagan custom in Europe in centuries past, and survived for a time among Southern whites. Complaints about the improvidence of whites in the South and of their ancestors in Britain before that were echoed in W.E.B. Du Bois's picture of his fellow blacks in the 1890s. Probably few poor nations waste more money by thoughtless and unreasonable expenditure than the American Negro, and especially those living in large cities. Thousands of dollars are annually wasted in amusements of various kinds and in miscellaneous ornaments and gewgaws. The Negro has much to learn of the Jew and the Italian as to living within his means and saving every penny from excessive and wasteful expenditures. It was not, however, from Jews or Italians that blacks had absorbed their culture. Du Bois's description of the spending habits of blacks in the 1890s was echoed by a contemporary observer, Jacob Riis, who said that the Negro loves fine clothes and good living a good deal more than he does a bank account.
Damn.
Similar observations have been made by many others over the years, inside and outside the black community. For the lower socioeconomic classes among blacks, Gunnar Myrdal's descriptions of them near the middle of the 20th century still bore a remarkable resemblance to descriptions of Southern whites and their region.
Look at those big families. That's crazy, right? Big family. Wow.
No forebears in Britain, including less resourcefulness, disorganized family life, lax sexual morals, and recklessness, with tendencies toward aggression and violence. Despite a generally sympathetic approach to the study of blacks in his landmark book, An American Dilemma, which has often been credited with a major influence on the advancement of civil rights, Myrdal also noted the low standards of efficiency, reliability, ambition, and morals actually displayed by the average Negro. He observed something of the...
That is actually a very good observation. The lack of discipline, the morals, and even the willing to strive. That's a very interesting observation. And how do we tackle this? How do we really tackle the problem that's too obvious?
The devil may care attitude in the pleasure-seeking of Negroes. and a general attitude in which life becomes cheap and crime not so reprehensible. Like other observers, Myrdal tended to attribute to slavery such aspects of black culture as the low regard for human life, when in fact, antebellum whites had exhibited this same reckless disregard of lethal dangers, and so had their ancestors in Britain. Unlike many others, however, Myrdal also recognized the influence of the Southern white culture on the culture of blacks, pointing out that the general Southern pattern of illegality maintained this low regard for human life. He also noted that the so-called Negro dialect is simply a variation on the ordinary Southern accent, that religious emotionalism was borrowed from and sanctioned by religious behavior among whites in the South, and that the Negro trait of audaciousness is characteristic of white Southerners too. He quoted black scholar and later statesman Ralph Bunche. White Southerners employ many of the defense mechanisms characteristic of the Negro. They often carry a chip on the shoulder. They indulge freely in self-commiseration. They rather typically and in real Negro fashion try to overcome a feeling of inferiority by exhibitionism, raucousness in dress, and exaggerated self-assertion.
Huh.
Although Dr. Bunche presented these as...
You know, it is true. It's true. It is true. There's some places in the South that you ask yourself, like, how in the hell we got here? Look at that picture, man. That's crazy. Look at the baby in the floor. Insane.
Parallels. Historically, it was, of course, the Southern whites who first had these patterns, reflecting patterns among their ancestors in Britain.
Wow.
In much of the literature on black culture, however, the supposed influence of slavery has been far more sweepingly assumed, and the cultural influence of white Southerners and their forebears in Britain largely ignored. Attempts to derive the black manner of speaking from slavery and its parallel among whites as an influence from black speech were answered by a Southern historian who asked, "From whence came the drawl of the people of the upper Great Plains and of the Blue Ridge, Smoky, and Cumberland Mountains, who have had little or no contact with the Negro?" Another cultural historian of Southerners aptly observed that Southerners, white and black, share the bonds of a common heritage, indeed a common tragedy, and often speak a common language, however seldom they may acknowledge it. Half a century after Myrdal, another study of racial attitudes noted the intimidating ethnic style of many underclass black males, and noted that nearly half of all murder victims in America were black, and that 94% of them were killed by other blacks. Many of these killings were due to gang members who killed for such reasons as, "'cause you look at me funny, 'cause you give me no respect," and other reasons reminiscent of the touchy pride and hair-trigger violence of rednecks and crackers in an earlier era.
But also that has to do with the fact that they have the low emotional control. Now, whether or not that has to do with cultural or, I was gonna say, IQ basis, I have no idea. No idea. Well, there might be some correlation there. Well, let me know what you guys see in the comment section below. I would love to hear your guys' opinion.